Hello again. This is going to be quite a short film. I just want to answer some of the accusations levelled in the comments made on the videos that I've already made. Chief of these is that I have what's described as an agenda. And I take this to mean that people are saying that I have a motive for what I'm doing, a motive for the things I'm saying, and a reason for looking at this aspect of history or that, as opposed to the mainstream view. This is perfectly true, of course. I do have an agenda, so does every other historian. The problem with history is that it consists of literally infinite events, motivations, patterns of weather, all sorts of things. There's millions of people, each with their own history and reason for acting as they do. There are unexpected showers of rain that might throw all the plans for a battle into doubt. There are millions and millions of things happening. It's impossible to describe even a single day anywhere in the world and include every single factor that affects what's happened that day. For that reason, this applies obviously to battles, assassinations, invasions, inventions, anything you like. We always have to select which things we look at and examine. We can't possibly examine everything. We select them. So we take some of the facts that we can see and we emphasise those and examine those, and we discard others and perhaps ignore them, which is exactly what I've been doing when I've been looking at things like the slave trade on these videos. That's what everybody does. I might choose different things to look at than others, but the way that I'm doing it is precisely the way that someone else might examine the slave trade or World War II or something of that sort. It's simply a process of selection. Now, obviously, my gender, skin colour, nationality and age are going to affect my choices of facts to look at. They're going to make a difference which things I think are important. Exactly the same would be true of, say, a young black woman from Ghana. She might look at the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade that is, and select different facts and emphasise different things and not look at some of the things that I've looked at. It doesn't mean that I'm right and she's wrong, or that she's right and I'm wrong. It just means that our personalities, our own backgrounds have affected what it is we're looking at. There's no such thing as impartial history. All history is a process of selecting different things and looking at them, and by implication ignoring other facts, other things. This is why I find it a little bit irritating when people comment on these videos, say, oh, you're only saying that because you're white. Of course I am. Of course I'm white. Of course that affects what things I say. Exactly the same way that some of those people commenting have been black. They're only making their comments and saying what they're saying because they're black. It's exactly the same. The important thing, though, is that it is facts that you select. It's not. There's a limit to what you can do with history. You can't make things up. If I started saying things in the videos that I'm making that were completely untrue or fictitious, then people would have grounds for complaint. But every time someone has accused me of lying, and let's face it, those of you that have looked at the comments have seen people saying I'm a fucking lunatic, it's bullshit, liar, idiot. Every time I've asked people, they've been unable to show that the things that I've said are untrue, which I don't think any of the things are untrue. I think that I've limited myself to selecting certain facts. I haven't said anything false. The reason people get so ticked off with me is absurdly simple. It's because history is immensely complicated. It's a really, really tricky process involving, as I say, infinite factors. So what we do, we boil it down into simple forms. We make little fairy tales or myths from it, and it makes it easier to understand and remember when we're talking about things like the First World War or the slave trade or the stories of Florence Nightingale or Mary Seacole. We produce little fairy tales and then we can remember them easily. So there's the slave trade, there's the story of Mary Seacole, there's the story of the Battle of the Somme in 1916. There's no harm in this. as long as we remember that those little myths that we create are just one version of history. They're one version of history which has been made by ignoring lots of facts and just including a few simple ones that people are able to grasp and remember long enough to pass their GCSE history examinations. The difficulty is if we start treating those stories as being the only version of history. So that something like the transatlantic slave trade, we take the myth as it's handed down to us and taught in our schoolrooms and during Black History Month, and we take that to be the only version of reality. It's like Holy Scripture. When that happens, we get upset if anybody challenges our myth. For a lot of black people in Britain and the United States, the transatlantic slave trade story is almost like a holy scripture. It's like the founding myth of their people, and they really take it ill if anything is said that seems to be challenging that view or even asking questions about it. This is dangerous because it breeds fanatics. It means that people are devoted to a myth rather than to the examination of history. And I think that's really hazardous for society and for the individuals concerned. Anyway, that's enough of an old white guy droning on like this. Tomorrow I hope to return to something a little less dry and a bit more gee whiz and exciting.